Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Chris Gennaro. My co-host is Eric Rizk.
Hello.
And today we have Sentient Horror on. How are you doing, guys?
Doing great.
Awesome. Thanks for
Great.
having us.
Fantastic.
Okay, why don't you guys tell who you are? Like I think we said in the pre-interview, I don't know if you caught it, but the names don't show up on the recording. So for everybody watching at home, just tell who you are and what you do in the band.
So I'm Matt Moliti. I'm the lead guitar and lead vocal.
Tyler, play bass. One note at a time. All that.
Evan, I'm the drummer.
And I'm John, the rhythm guitarist.
Okay, cool. So you guys had an album out. It's relatively new. I'm really kind of trying to forget 2020. So I think your guys, it came out in November of 2019. So that's last month as far as I'm concerned.
Feels like it.
So talk about recording that. I think it was the first recording with a couple of you guys on it. I think with Tyler would be the first recording with you on.
Yep.
And it sounds like Eric came back to the band for this recording. Or were you on it, or you came back after?
No, so I actually just as of this month came back to the band.
Oh, okay.
On that recording.
So how was the recording for that album? I saw that you guys used a session drummer on that. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
Yep. So fun fact, and I don't mind mentioning this stuff. So the album is actually programmed, the drums.
Okay.
So
Cool.
Sean Myers was the drummer that he helped out with making sure that the drum parts made sense. So in other words, like he listened through everything that was programmed and made sure that all the parts like could be played, and like because a lot of times like if you're not a drummer and you're putting a drum part together, you may like, I don't know, get out of a fill in a weird way and then land on a crash that wouldn't, wouldn't really be what a real drummer would do. See, he actually like came by and listened to all of the drum programming and made sure that it was all like realistic, that it could all actually really be played. So we credit him in that capacity. But yeah, it is actually programmed drumming on there.
Was he able to? Because I've done a little bit of drum programming, and mine certainly doesn't sound as realistic as yours by any stretch. But does he then fix some of the stuff, or he just tells you what he doesn't like and then you fix it?
Yeah. So it's actually the reason why it sounds so realistic is because I used a program called Easy Drummer that a company called TuneTrack makes, and so they have like actual drummers come in and record like all these different samples. They play it on an electronic drum kit, and it's not quantized. So when you pull it in, it's the real hits, and when you like kind of like obviously they get like players that are super accurate. I think like the two sample libraries that I pulled from were ones by Dirk Verburen, who is he's in Megadeth now.
Okay, so then
I worked for a while, and a little bit of a sample set that the drummer from Nagelfar tracked for them. So basically, like you pull in these hits, like these drum patterns, and then you can edit them. You could like change like what if you want to take a hit out, or if you want to like add a cymbal hit, or change it from the from a hat to the right or whatever. It's all, you can manipulate all that. You could pull different fills in and stuff. So a lot of the problems can come in from like, let's say you're pulling in a fill that is from like a different sample library, and then so like you have like the beat going, and then like it gets into a fill, and it's just like, oh well, is that realistic? You know what I mean? Like so that type of stuff is what Sean listened to make sure that it was all like seamless.
Okay, and I think you answered one of my next questions, which was Unholy Forms also seems like it's drum programmed too then.
It is, yeah.
Okay.
We have hopefully the third full length, which we just started working on writing fairly recently. But yeah, the first record and the second record wound up hitting us at points in our career where we were in between drummers. So instead of waiting, to get that set up, it was just like, screw it, we'll use the programming. No one really seemed to mind. We didn't get anyone calling us out on it or.
No, it sounds fantastic. Yeah, I certainly didn't know. So, and
I didn't know either.
Yeah.
Couldn't tell. Yeah.
But now, Evan, you got to learn all that. You got to learn, at least from the last album, not the new stuff, but you got to learn all that drum programming. Not the programming or how to program, but you got to play the shit stuff.
Yeah, well, actually, it's kind of funny. Luckily, I was in the band when the album was written, so
Okay.
I already know all the material. So it's just been a matter of getting the rust off in the past few weeks.
Cool.
Yeah, and he did an awesome job on when he joined the band, and all we had was the first record and the EP. So he just fell right in, playing all the stuff from Ungodly Forms.
Well, that's got to also pose some challenges too, though. If you're writing it on live drums, then it's not a matter of pulling in drum parts that you're getting from a library or something. It's actually like replicating something that a live drummer did in programming has got to be even tougher, right? Yes, no.
Yeah. I mean, there's always going to be some adjustments going either from programming to live drumming or from live drumming to programming. You know what I mean? Everybody plays parts a little bit differently, so for sure.
Yeah, and ultimately in this, not just some other history on some of our other drummers that we've had. Every single drummer that we've had has interpreted the material in their own way. Which I think is awesome because everyone has their own style of playing. So so when you see us performing, it's when we had the previous drummer we had was Ryan Cardoza. He is on the EP. When he plays the Ungodly Forms material, it doesn't sound like how Evan, you for example, perform it. Everyone kind of puts their touch. And then when Evan plays the songs that Ryan tracked on, it doesn't, it doesn't sound like Evan replicating Ryan. It sounds like Evan, so which gives a completely different feel.
Cool.
Yeah, I guess that's kind of like a subtle thing, though. When I listen to the three albums, and I've definitely listened to them sort of back to back on occasion, there's no big shift for me. One of the only things I noticed was that maybe there was some slower stuff on the new CD that I don't think was on a lot of the other ones. I was kind of curious if that was something that just happened. It wasn't a ton, but there was some. I want to almost call it sort of doomy a little bit.
Yeah, it's kind of it's interesting because I think one of the hardest things with writing a death metal record is keeping it from sounding too. I feel like when you do have just like constant fast tempo with no variance, it can get that way. So having those slower sections kind of break up the tunes, and that was something that was a conscious sort of effort in the writing, was to have those ups and downs within the song, and that was really inspired by classic records like Left Hand Path, and the first, the only Carnage record, Dark Recollections. Those were probably the two biggest album influences on Morbid Realms, was Dark Recollections by Carnage and Left Hand Path by Entombed. And a little bit of Scream Bloody Gore. Yeah, just to have that those big those shifts to kind of break the song up.
Cool.
Yeah, I see when I'm looking through like all your, some of the reviews, whether it be the fan reviews or the magazine reviews, a lot of them mention, the Swedish death metal stuff, influence, and, I was just kind of curious if that was definitely something you were, I mean, you mentioned Entombed, so I assume that was definitely something you were cognizant of when you were writing the stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. I mean, that's probably like, as far as like scenes go, probably like my favorite scene for death metal. If someone were to ask me what is my favorite death metal record of all time, my answer is Left Hand Path.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, there's definitely other stuff in there. I'm a huge Carcass fan, huge Death fan, a huge fan of a band called Gorefest. I know that they're not like
Gorefest.
I mean,
I know that.
Yeah.
Band. Yeah.
Maybe they're not like a huge name, but like one of my absolute favorite death metal bands.
They have a live album live at Eindhoven.
Yes,
that one.
Yeah,
I
that's a great one.
I remember that.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good one.
Yeah. So and I love I mean, all different bands from different scenes and stuff. But I think definitely and of course the guitar tone, the whole chainsaw, based on the Boss HM2 thing. That's gonna like instantly make something sound more like Swedish just to have that on there. So the Swedish thing is a big influence, but there's definitely other influences in there, and that's something that I think moving forward, we want to see if we can bring some of the other influences out a little bit more, just to kind of give a little bit, make it kind of stand out a little bit than just kind of being like a that's just like another Entombed clone kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
So why don't you talk about what those other influences are? Like, I'm curious what I have to look forward to with the next CD.
So I mean, so for me personally, it is a lot of the Carcass, which has been teased at, for the last couple of releases. Even on Ungodly Forms, there's moments that I know when I wrote those riffs that it was like a Carcass thing, specifically Splinter the Cross had a lot of moments in there where I'm like, okay, I'm going to go do this like Carcass vibe. But it was brought out even more on Morbid Realms, the early Death vibe, and maybe even like tapping into some of that, some more of the British vibe, the maybe even getting like that sort of bolt thrower type of thing here and there. It's too early to say exactly, but yeah, definitely sort of leaning into some of that, maybe more British, like I said, with the Carcass thing, and maybe a little more of the Floridian thing with the Death thing, or early Obituary and stuff like that.
Cool.
Still like not deviating too far from, we don't want to like pull a 180 or anything.
It's totally inspired by Mamma Mia soundtrack.
The what? The Mamma Mia soundtrack?
Mamma Mia, all right.
Different. So Tyler, then tell us what your influences are and what you're going to bring.
Well, my influences, I've mostly been involved in a lot of like black metal through the course of my career. Primarily a guitarist. So in terms of bass and what I can do, typically it's Matt. He writes very fast, so it's like, all right, here's a song. Here's kind of what I have written. What can you add to that? What sort of adjustments and like feel are there? What sort of accents? Like how can the low end really accompany what's going on with the chainsaw tone and like accent it? Like personally, a lot of my influences with like bass and stuff are bands like Amun Ra. That whole like really like sludgy atmospheric, very 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 like funeral doomy sort of thing.
Okay.
But kind of trying to translate that towards like that same sort of feeling, that same sort of carrying of tension into death metal. And there's a lot of opportunities for that. There's a lot of space for all that to happen, and it's really just like this like there's a lot of subtlety into how the bass can be effective in it rather than just mimicking what the guitars are playing and just being like a lower octave or something like that.
So you try and compose like a more like intricate bass line. It's not following what the riff is following necessarily.
In a sort of way,
yeah.
It's a little bit more subtle than that, I guess, is the how you put it. Like, you know, I'm still following the riffs. You know, I'm not like doing something that's totally like off, like doing my own thing, like in the corner, like hell yeah, this is fucking sick. But like, you know, a lot of it is in terms of playing dynamically, and especially like playing like live and stuff. You know, one example is with the studio, we play with just a clean, simple bass tone, and that's very like, you know, this is how the song's supposed to sound. This is the feel. This is the how it carries everything, or how everything carries bass. Whatever. But live, I'll use a little bit of overdrive on that, and it gives a bit more opportunity for that impactfulness that I think the low end should provide in death metal. It's not like, it's more, I don't think atmospheric is the right word, but like more in terms of holding together, just the intensity. You know, having that like really heavy driving low end, like really can like blow people's asses off. And so that's what I try and do, you know.
All right. Yeah.
Here's where I get you in trouble. You play with being a former guitar player or a current guitar player is playing bass. Do you play with a pick or with your fingers?
Oh, I play with a pick.
No.
I can smack the strings harder. That's what it's all about, you know. And like, it's playing with a pick. It doesn't matter so much. Like, still playing all the notes. I'm not, you know, palm muting random stuff. It's yeah. And then like there's some like little widdly woo shit that I'll do, you know, in terms of like playing like legato, like not just like you know, I'll throw like a little some finger picking stuff in there if the song has like the space for it and like I feel comfortable doing it. But yeah, it's mostly just a pick.
Did you guys Did you guys get to do any shows before COVID hit? Two.
Oh,
the release show. Okay. That was we did that at the Meat Locker. That was in December. Yeah. The release show for Morbid Realms, and we did one show in Philly in February, I think.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Was it February?
Yeah.
And then it was like, yeah.
Where'd you play in Philly? Kung Fu Necktie or
the Tusk?
No, the Tusk.
Oh, the Tusk. Okay.
Yeah, the Tusk. It was cool. It was the first time we ever played there, and it was Hal. I'm going to butcher his last name. I'm going to butcher his last name so bad I'm not going to say it. But he put the show on. The production company is. Oh, now I'm going to get in a lot of trouble. He's going to be watching this. It's just like, oh, they don't even remember the name of my production company. But no, like,
Ron Kaiser?
no, he's a really awesome dude. What was it?
Ron Kaiser, is that him?
No, you know what? I feel so bad about blanking on this. I'm going to look it up real quick.
Time flies on the chrono coaster.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just so you know, I do put all the links in the description. So if you hit me up with that after, if you can't think of it or find it, it will be in the description. I'm pretty good about putting all that stuff in there.
Deathsculpted Productions is Deathsculpted Productions.
Okay.
But he put on a great show. And you know, we did that one with Vivisect. Really, really dug those guys a lot. Very like Autopsy inspired. So if you want to check out another really awesome band from the Jersey area, check out Vivisect.
Vivisect, all right.
Yes.
Okay, we'll take note of. Yeah, I mean, if you're called Vivisect, you would think that Autopsy, you know, would be a theme there. Actually, that brings a couple segues. Themes. You guys seem to do a lot of Lovecraft stuff. I assume that's coming from you, Matt, but because you have a shirt out. All your stuff is like pretty sold out on Bandcamp. but I noticed you had a really cool shirt which looks like it has Catullo on it. Yes.
Yeah, it's funny that it just so happened that so the artist that I used for our shirts, and he also did the album cover for Ungodly Forms. My friend Patrick Tegnander in Sweden, and he does like really great like hand like pen and paper stuff, and so like we always go to him for our t-shirts, and it just so happened he like showed me a design he was working on that was that. And then we had like a lead off track from Morbid Realms was Call of Ancient Gods, which, you know, definitely, you know, is the Call of Cthulhu. And so I saw it, I'm like, oh man, like I almost thought he did that for us for that. And he was like, no, it was just, I just drew it. It's just a design. I want to know what you think. I'm like, can we use that? So yeah, it's perfect.
You're like, it's for us now.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and speaking about, and so that brings us to another good segue, both with art and butchering names, because this is a name I am not going to try to pronounce. But you did your last two album covers with the same guy. No, I'm not going to try to say it. It's Juan something. What do we just call him Juan?
Juan Castillo. The guy from Ghouls. Holy shit! His artwork is like so fucking detailed and so incredible. Like, it's like. It's good. It's great. But yeah.
Yeah, I checked out his page for a little bit. I don't know if he's making a living at it, but he's definitely doing a ton of stuff.
Fucking hope he's making a living at it. But
you would hope when you're churning out that much stuff that you're not doing that as a side hustle, right? Because that would want to kill yourself.
Detail and shit. Holy fuck.
But so how did you guys get hooked up with him? Did you see another album cover that he did that you were like, yeah, that's the guy?
It was actually Patrick who recommended him.
That's the guy from your friend from Sweden.
Yep. Mm-hmm,
okay.
Who did Ungodly Forms. His company, by the way, is Chainsaw Design. I don't know if company, I'm using the words correctly, but that's like his moniker, Chainsaw Design. That he does a lot. He did our logo, the Sentient Horror logo. He does a lot of bands' logos, and so we had wanted to use him again for the album cover for Enter Crypts Below, or for the Crypts Below. And I think at the time he was taking a break from doing album artwork. So I was just like, well, can you recommend me someone? He's just like, oh, check out Wanyo. And so he sent me a link to his Facebook page. I'm like, wow, this is, really, really sick stuff. I mean, I think like the artwork that really sold me on him, he did for Revel in Flesh, a band out of Germany. And I was like, yeah, like I'll talk to this guy. And yeah, we used him for the Crypts Below EP and then again for Morbid Realms. And yeah, it's just absolutely fantastic. I've actually seen that in, watching him develop, he's done work for bigger and bigger bands. He just did like Black Dahlia Murder's last record.
Oh, wow.
So yeah.
Yeah. Very cool.
Okay. So you also talked about before we started recording that you're teaching now music. So I take it you're taking on students.
Mm-hmm.
What percentage of those kids that you're getting in? I assume that's mostly kids, yes?
Yeah. So I work for a company called the School of Rock. They got like, tons of locations all across the US. So here's another really like kind of like interesting like fact, Sentient Horror fact. Tyler was a former student of mine. And Evan was also a School of Rock student. And both Tyler and Evan did a showcase together when they were both in their own respective School of Rocks.
Okay.
Without, at the time didn't know each other, and then now in a band together, which is a funny kind of twist of circumstances.
Did some Monomarth tune, and then Evan played 20-minute or like it was Dream Theater. How long was that?
That one's like 15 minutes, I think. I'm not sure.
You guys played like the whole fucking thing.
Yeah.
Are these guys actually gonna play like this entire fucking song? And yeah, they did. It was
a bunch of 12-year-olds trying to play a Dream Theater song.
Yeah.
That's ambitious though. When I was 12, yeah, I wasn't playing stuff like two chord songs or something.
I don't think I was playing anything at 12.
Actually, yeah, I wasn't. That you're right. I don't think I picked up an instrument either at 12. Yeah, I was playing nothing. That's right.
Two chords.
Yeah, I remember that guitar lessons really weren't that fun for me, and they would try to make me play like Mary Had a Little Lamb, and I'd be like, I want to rock. Stop. Teach me Slayer. You know. And
Definitely wasn't something as technical as Dream Theater, the guitar lesson.
no.
I think I would learn maybe, what was that song? House of the Rising Sun or something. It was just like a couple chords, like the first position chords. That's about it. Yeah.
But House of the Rising Sun is at least cool. Like, you know.
Yes. Yeah.
So what percentage of your students come in and like want to do metal, or like do they funnel all like the metal kids or grown-ups to you?
They do tend to funnel the metal kids to me because I am kind of known as like the metal guy there. You know, when Tyler was at the school as a student, it was like right in the boom of like that like mid to late 2000s metal boom, or as I call it, the Metalocalypse years.
Okay.
Because that to me that cartoon frames like the years that metal was like like a bigger thing again. You know, probably as close to what it was like in the 80s as I would imagine.
It was like brought into the mainstream in this like different sort of light that like got a lot of different people into it.
Mm-hmm.
It was like really cool about like being a student in that time, and like having Matt as a teacher was just like, hey, I kind of like this like metal stuff. Like, what can you show me about that? It's like, all right, well, here's a Sound of Perseverance. Here's Symbolic. Check out Left Hand Path, and then like here's a bunch of other prog bands that I never bothered to listen to. But like, yeah, that was interesting time.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
So we haven't heard
nowadays.
Yeah.
Oh, I was just gonna say nowadays it's kind of weird because the extreme thing was what got the attention in that like mid to late 2000s kind of era with again I refer to it as the Metalocalypse years because that's like from when that show aired to when it was canceled is like that was like when it was its thing. And so it wasn't uncommon for kids to just come in and be into, I mean, it was still like what you'd consider like mainstream extreme metal, but it was extreme metal. And like, to me, that's like, I know a lot of people are like, they like to like shit on like gateway bands and stuff like that. You know what? Whatever gets you into it, whatever. You know what I mean? So like Amon Amarth or whatever, if you listen to Amon Amarth and eventually like Amon Amarth gets you into Autopsy because you dig, that's awesome. So I'm not gonna I would never ever badmouth any band for being like a gateway band or anything, but there isn't that. The extreme is underground again. 100%. Like I really don't see a lot of kids coming in like really into the extreme side of things the way that it was back then. And to be perfectly honest, like I don't think I could even tell you what is. I'm so like out of like anything mainstream right now that like, I guess I even like asked a student not too long ago, I'm like, what do you even listen to that's metal, like modern and metal anymore, because like at first I was like, oh, maybe the gent thing is still like a thing. And he's like, no, like it's more like math rock now. I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. But like,
shit rules.
So we didn't hear Jonathan's origin story. How did and we how did you get hooked up with these guys?
Well, a mutual friend of me and Matt. He works with Matt. His name is Sean. He's a drummer. And Matt was asking about a rhythm guitar position, and Sean suggested me. So we set that meeting up, and me and Matt just asked, some basic questions like what I was into and stuff like that. And we had a meeting. I went to one of their shows when I think it was maybe the only show that you guys played without a second guitar player, perhaps.
Mm-hmm. We did 2 shows as a 3-piece.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, it was rough because I was actually playing bass more leading up to that for years. I hadn't touched a guitar for about 2 years, and learning that material was kind of hard, you know. But I put the work in, and I guess they liked it. So, you know, I really enjoyed learning all the stuff, and still learning and playing with them now.
John's nickname is the Machine Gun. He got that on tour because of his right hand is a machine gun. Dude's got one of the fastest right hands I've ever seen.
Picking hand.
It's ridiculous. Yeah.
Okay.
Do you guys still play stuff from the first album?
Hell yeah.
We do, yeah.
That's some bangers on it.
We've been rehearsing Abyssal Ways, Beyond the Curse of Death, Blood Rot, and Die Decay Devour was in our set on the tour. We haven't played that in a while. But like I always kind of like envisioned like the type of thing like, you know, with the longevity of a band, like you know, like each new album cycle, the potential to sort of like dig out a tune that maybe like you didn't play the last time around, you know, like you didn't have it in the set for a while, and then it's just like, oh shit, they're playing that one again, you know, like you know, getting in the mindset of like a fan or something. So I could totally see us, you know, when, you know, we're on the next record cycle, maybe going back to a tune on Ungodly Forms that we hadn't played in a really long time or something like that, and bringing it back. So yeah, I would never ignore anything in our catalog like that.
Yeah, I think I was specifically thinking about the title track to that first album, the Ungodly Forms one. Stuck out to me as something I really think would work live, and if I went to see you guys, or when I go to see you guys, that's one I would be like, yes, let's do that.
So funny about that one. So that left the set when we switched to 6-string guitars, because we had been a 7-string guitar band for a little bit, and then I kind of like happened upon B standard guitar. I was in a Samash, just kind of like killing time or something, and I remember just seeing the, you know, they had like an Ibanez Prestige, and I really like Ibanez guitars. I pulled it down from the wall and started playing it, and I noticed like right away, I was like, oh, like it was used. I'm like, whoever sold this to them had this in B standard, you know, in B baritone tuning. And I started playing it, and I was just like, that's the missing element. I'm like, that sound I would hear on all of these old classic death metal records where they're tuned down to B, you know, like the, you know, like Carcass and the Swedish bands and stuff. I was like, that's the sound. I'm like, it's not just the extended range down to B, it's the thick strings tuned down, like the way they were like reverberate, you know, like vibrating in my hands. I was just like, that's it. We gotta go to 6s. So we switched over to 6 strings tuned down, and we've been in that setup since the tour that we did in Europe. So we actually, I had to refigure out some leads because they were originally written on a 7-string that could go up to the high. Didn't have that anymore. And Morbid Realms is all B standard 6-string. But the one thing is that the guitars that we got had the Floyd Rose bridges, where you can't mess with the tuning on them because the bridge gets all weird. And then Ungodly Forms is in drop A. So we were just like, oh, guess we're not doing Ungodly Forms anymore. But I remember when we were on tour, we even did a show where like everyone in the front row, like when we were gonna do like the encore, they were shouting Ungodly Forms, and I'm like, oh fuck, like we can't do it. And so so that's something we talked about because recently we are now, me and John, playing guitars that I blocked my bridge, and he's on a hardtail now. So we're like, you know what, we could probably bring Ungodly Forms back out, which that seems to be like one that people want to hear us do. So yeah, we may have to.
I don't know if I get a vote, but I would say yes to that. just saying.
He votes yes, Chris.
I vote yes.
I know Evan even said that was one you wanted to play, right?
Yeah, definitely. It's got a pretty slamming chorus, so I can see that one working live. Mm-hmm. And I've actually never. I was in the band for about a year before I kind of took a hiatus from the band, and actually, I think in the time that we were playing live, we never got to play that tune. So that would be cool to bring back.
Cool.
You mentioned doing a tour. Who did you get to tour with? A band in particular, or?
We toured with a Carl Tomb. They're out of Berlin. Fucking incredible people. One of like the most like wonderful group of fucking fellas on the face of the planet. Like everything about that tour, it was like 2 weeks or some odd, 2 weeks and like change. But like, yeah, we kind of like sat in the van with them. It was like, all right, we gonna play some riffs. Yeah, we're gonna play some riffs. And it was like 2 weeks of like the greatest fucking 2 weeks of my life. Like awesome people, like fantastic band too. Like it's chainsaw death metal. It's like that Swedish sort of style, but like there's a lot of subtlety into it. There's a lot of like sort of like jazziness into it. Like I don't know, man. It's great, and they're wonderful people.
I missed the name. What was the name of the band?
Band is called Carnal Tomb.
Tomb, like tomb?
Tomb, yeah. Like
yes, that's right.
For all them dead people.
So how do you write your material as a band, like live, or people come in with ideas, or how does the music come together for the band?
I think Tyler had mentioned that I write very fast.
You write.
So
okay.
I write very, very fast. So it's pretty much like I'll start writing a song at the beginning of the week, and by the end of the week, like the first rough draft of the demo is done.
Wow.
And I'm just like, all right, here's the tune, guys. And I think it's like there's been instances where I probably just like I'll then send out like 3 revisions, and I'm like, I'm probably like annoying the hell out of these guys. I'm just like, here's the final version, and like a half hour later, I just did this revision, and then maybe like 2 hours later, here's the next revision. I'm just like, don't pay attention to the first two. So I am writing the lion's share of the material. John will throw in some riffs as well, but it's always like finalized as a band.
Cool.
So in other words, like, the demos are out, but like as a group we'll get together and be like, let's make sure all the transitions are set. And then as far as like the drums and bass and everything, like Tyler and Evan pretty much come up with their own parts. I mean, obviously, like, they're going to follow the sort of feel of what's in the demo, but as far as the specifics that they're playing, that's all them. They're coming up with all that. And then like John and I might work out like, specific details with the rhythm parts, or if there's harmonies or something like that.
Okay. You guys did have a name change. I mean, this is going way back, but you had a slight name change, I want to call it, because I guess you started out as Sentience. Mm-hmm. And was that a situation where somebody else had the name, or you just were like, screw that?
Yeah, it was actually our European record label, Testimony Records, that suggested the name change, because there was a band, like a progressive metal band out of the UK that was called Sentience that they found. And they were like, because they were going to do heavy promoting in Europe, they didn't want like confusion. Because I guess like they're relatively small, but at the same time they were appearing on festivals. So, What was that?
Avoid headaches.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I mean, and I was just like, oh, well, what do we change it to? And I even remember the day I came to the guys. And at the time, that was with the predecessors of Tyler and Evan, which were Ian, who Tyler is wearing on his shirt. So everyone, that's our old bass player, Ian.
Look at him. Beautiful man.
And then Ryan was our Cardozo was our old drummer. But John was in the band at the point. And I remember it was a gig at St. Vitus. And I remember like saying to them, like, what about Sentient Horror? Because it keeps the sentient part, like it's similar enough, but adding the extra word is just like, okay, and it sounds more death metal. Like
it does
you know, it makes it sound more like a death metal band, whereas Sentience could be anything, you know.
I agree. Cool.
What's the theme there? You know, I figured, is that some take on like man or AI or anything like that?
I thought it sounded cool. But then you know, it turned out like I obviously had to check to see if it was getting used anywhere. And there was like a brutal death metal band that had a song called Sentient Horror. I'm like, okay, that, you know, that's okay. And then there's a Magic the Gathering card called Sentient Horror. So and I'm like, you know what? Yeah, there is. Yeah, there's a Magic the Gathering card. It's like some creature or whatever, and it's like yada yada yada, the Sentient Horror.
Oh yeah, Giratina, the Sentient Horror.
Oh, somebody's looking stuff up quickly.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's just a coincidence then.
But that's a coincidence. Yeah.
Okay.
Even though a mutual friend of ours always jokes that our Enter Crypts Below EP cover looks like a Mana Vault. I think it's a Magic card. I think, Tyler.
Yeah.
I played Magic when I was like in middle school, so I don't get all the references.
I still play Magic. Magic fucking rules.
Yeah, there's such a cross section between metal and I don't want to geekdom for better word, like all that, you know, Magic.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
Dude, most people I know, like, and like, you know, like the entire metal community is just like, yeah, they either currently play Magic or Dungeons and Dragons, or like they used to. They stopped like last year. I don't know, man. Like that crossover is great because there's so much lore to everything, and there's just like worlds created and like, you know, things you can draw from inspiration from all these like, you know, beautifully fleshed out fantasy worlds and everything, like all this artwork. There's so much to all of it that you can really draw from. It's the same as drawing from like movies and artwork, everything.
Sure.
I worked at a comic book shop, I think, when I was in college, longer ago than I want to admit, but it was sort of in the height of the Magic the Gathering, and I didn't play, and I just took constant shit for it, like every day. So you know,
fucking nerd.
I
You don't
never
play
know.
Magic the
To
Gathering.
not feel bad, Chris. I never played it either.
Okay.
I will admit though, yeah, when I was younger, I did play some Dungeons and Dragons.
I played a lot of Dungeons and Dragons when I was younger. That should shock nobody, but yes.
So wait, what are some of the themes, like lyrical themes, in your music then?
It does. The first record was way more on the very like old school, like horror movies, you know, slasher film, like way more related to stuff like that. Like the one thing that I do try to do when I write lyrics, and this is my King Diamond influence coming out, is that I try to get that even if it's not totally apparent in the lyric, I have a story in my head when I'm writing them. So in other words, you know, any of the songs on any of the records, I could tell you there's the story to that song. And whether it's inspired, like, so for example, Loss of Existence was inspired by watching Silence of the Lambs. And so I was inspired by, you know, the Buffalo Bill character, and kind of like the lyrics are sort of describing like that sort of like the imagery of his lair, and and Bound to Madness is based on Hellraiser, and it's from the perspective of someone discovering the box and becoming a Cenobite. So that's that one. But then there are other ones where I'll just come up with a story on my own. There's this like a subtle narrative that I've taken through a couple of tunes about some sort of like unnamed like necromancer.
Okay.
And it started in Blood Rot.
Okay.
Where I name dropped like the necromancer. And so I will bring it back like every so often. So like Sworn to the Dead mentions the necromancer. So maybe this is leading up to an eventual like death metal concept record, but but yeah, I'll have like a subtle like sort of like name drop with that particular unnamed necromancer character.
Yeah, me and Eric were talking about, we're both big fans of Voivod, and they sort of do, there's not a ton of bands that I know of, and maybe that's just my ignorance, but who do those types of concept albums. But yeah, the Voivod was always, and King Diamond obviously would be these one-off album story arcs.
Did one not too long ago. They did Death Revenge, which was really cool. I really liked that record of theirs, and that was like a death metal concept record. So I would love to do one.
I assume your LPs come with the lyric sheet and stuff.
They do, yeah.
And if you're buying the CD digitally, is there any way to get that lyric sheet, or that's the draw for the LP?
Yeah, I would hope that the draw would also be the awesome vinyl variants that both Redefining Darkness and Testimony did of them. But I have actually responded to some people who've messaged us on our Facebook page, where I was just like, they're like, I bought the CD and it didn't come with the booklet because it was a digipack, and I was just like, that sucks. I'm sorry. Like, I'll email you the document file of all the lyrics. I'm
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So I did that for someone, but I think like nowadays, like a lot of websites upload them and stuff like that. They may be available somewhere like that.
Yeah. And then the one other question, because you mentioned your European record label. And I assume that Redefining Darkness is your American record label.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So how do you work that out? And I assume they have to be friends, right?
Yeah. So they cooperate the release on with one another. And actually, if you check all the releases, you'll see both of their information because they go in on the press together. But what winds up happening is that they split who gets what variants. So, like, for example, from Morbid Realms, Redefining Darkness got the clear vinyl with the orange and purple splatter and the orange and silver swirl. And then Testimony got the blue with green and pink splatter and the black and yellow swirl and the black and gray swirl. But it's like all in one order. And then they just say, well, we have... they have this variant, they have that variant, and they sell in their territories. I think you can order like worldwide though, like if you order on their web stores. But
yeah, I noticed Redefining Darkness has a lot of European bands. Like they're a lot. Some of these labels do focus in one part, but they're definitely global. I guess it is kind of surprising that they press them in one place and then ship, whoever's doing the pressing will actually ship an amount to, overseas or vice versa.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think just monetarily, I think it works out in everyone's favor when they're kind of splitting everything up that way.
That the shipping, even though the shipping costs, it just pays to still do them as a single run, as opposed to like them both.
Well, there's not a lot of presses left, right? I mean, there's only.
Well, yeah, that's another thing
presses
too.
So yeah.
I think the company they're using is A to Z Media, and I think they're based out of, I want to say Ukraine. I think. I know they're an Eastern European.
Yeah.
So regardless of whether or not Redefining Darkness or Testimony we're going through them individually or not, it would be coming from there anyway.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's cool. What are we doing on time? We're running pretty long. Not that I mind. I'm having a good time, obviously.
Great. Yeah, for sure.
What do you got? What do you got? Anything, Eric? Anything more?
Actually, you know what I wanted to mention, because I know, the Swedish sound. You hear people constantly, they'll mention Entomb and Dismember, but I noticed one of the tags on your that you had also as Grave, and actually I like Grave a lot, but you don't hear a lot about Grave. Like at least they're not as popular as like an Entombed or a Dismember. You know what I mean?
I feel like Grave, out of all the Swedish bands, sound the most American. Yeah. They kind of have a little bit more of that. They're less melodic than Entombed and Dismember ever got. And they're a little bit more, guttural, I guess. Like the vocals were always deeper and stuff. So I mean, there is a bit of Grave. I would say that one of some of my favorite lesser known bands from the Swedish scene. I really like a band called Nirvana 2002, and they only ever put a demo or demos out.
Okay.
They never made it to the full length stage.
Okay.
But as far as I'm considered, they were the best band that I heard from when I really got into that scene of bands that had demos but never put a full length record out. Like they should have had a full length.
Okay.
Like their tunes are awesome. Yeah.
Okay.
They definitely lean more on I guess maybe a bit more on the Entombed side, but very memorable and catchy, and I really dig them a lot.
Okay.
And then another big one for me being Edge of Sanity. But I guess they're not like super obscure, but they're not like, they're not as big as Entombed and Dismember.
Yeah. Sure.
Jonathan just got a beer or something.
Disappeared?
Nothing gets past me.
What? How do you see that? I don't even see that on my screen. Look at that. You have a good.
And I'm looking at this little ass monitor too.
All right. Escape. Does anyone have anything else they want to promote or coming up, or is anyone else in another band, side project, anything else you want to promote?
I think we all have a little bit of side project stuff. You guys want to mention any side project stuff?
Some like side project stuff. Like a lot of it was kind of stopped due to COVID. The black metal bands that play in are Worthless. That's with our old drummer from Sentient Horror, Ryan. Okay. And then another one of our friends, Connor, who did vocals for us for once or twice. Okay. But, we had some shows planned for this year, but so it goes. So, once those get rescheduled, put that on your vague calendars. I don't know.
Yeah, who knows? Yeah, sure.
But yeah.
So sorry. I have a side project of my own. It's called Will Your, and it's basically just a solo project. I read all the guitars, bass, and keyboards and stuff like that. Programmed the drums. I'm in the process of getting the vocals finalized at the moment, so that should be out hopefully by the end of November.
It's really fucking good.
Cool.
Are you doing a press of that, or is that a Bandcamp, or are you doing a press of that for anything?
I'm going to start with just a digital release and see how it goes from there, and yeah, we'll see.
Okay.
Say I've got a project as well, Dead and Dripping. It's just me, brutal death metal. I've got some pretty good news coming this weekend, so check me out on Facebook, Dead and Dripping, like the Cryptopsy song.
Cryptopsy fucking rules.
And, the other project that I'm involved in is called Heads for the Dead, and I just basically contribute like guitar leads to it. But that's it's kind of like a death metal kind of like supergroup type of project. It's got Ralph Halber from Revel in Flesh does the vocals, and he writes the concepts for the records, and Joni Pedersen, who, I mean, he's in a ton of different projects. He does he's in Womb Bath, he's in Henry Kane, and then they just this new record that's coming out is the first that's going to feature Ed Warby on drums from Gorefest and Hail Bullets, which was totally like, that was like amazingly sick to hear stuff I contributed to something with, because I absolutely love Ed's drumming, and obviously Gorefest is one of my favorite death metal bands, so to be involved in something he's also involved in was really, really cool. But they got a new record coming out called Into the Red, which is on Transcending Obscurity Records, and I think like the pre-orders are going up for that pretty soon.
Very cool.
Cool. Okay. I think we're gonna wrap it up. Let me just. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Again,
Thanks for doing this. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, thanks for doing this. I'm gonna put, like I mentioned.
And you know what? Actually, not to cut you off. Besides all the side project stuff, actual Sentient Horror related stuff. Totally forgot to mention.
Let's do it.
So I think I mentioned a little bit earlier, we just started working on material for a third record.
Yeah.
So we're about 5 songs into the writing process, with hopes to get the record out by the maybe, I want to say, summer, fall next year. That's what we're kind of like hoping for. Besides that, we are in the process of getting together some stuff for a YouTube page where we're going to be able to share some like archived live footage we've been kind of collecting, as well as maybe doing some like guitar playthroughs and stuff like that. So that's in the works right now. That's probably the most immediate thing that we've got sort of planned, besides the sort of projected third record.
Cool.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah, and I keep saying it. I'll put everything in the description below. I'm sure the URL list is going to be like massive. And even down the road, if you guys need me to put in some URL, something that you're doing, I'm always glad to do it. So just keep checking back. I'm sure people will comment over over time. And thanks a lot. Thanks. I really appreciate you guys coming on and doing this, and had a really great time.
Thank you.
For sure. Thanks for having us.
Yeah.